what's the number one tip you would give them on trying to get their dog started in shed hunting?
All right, the number one tip is avoid all the accidents because it's not fun. Two,
This segment of DoD TV is brought to you by Leupold, American to the core.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast. We're powered by DeerCast, and this is episode number 250. It's halfway to 500 if you're counting. On Zoom today, Mr. Matt Drury.
What's up? What's up? We got Tim Chelsvik in the studio. I'm in my studio here at home, which is basically my basement because my son's got COVID. He's fine, but we can't send him to school. So Raina's at work and I'm working from home. So we got a full Zoom episode today.
We're going full Zoom. We're sending it. What's it been like trying to work from home?
Not great.
Yes.
Monday was fine. Honestly, Monday was fine. I had a lot of Zoom calls that I was on. I probably had 4 different Zoom calls on Monday, and he was great. We had just gotten him a Star Wars Lego set, so he was busy. Yesterday, not as great. A lot of boredom set in.
Yeah, the curve starts to go downhill.
Yeah, we got, this today as we're filming this is what, Wednesday. We got a few more days left. So we're getting creative around here. Luckily, it was warm yesterday. We ended up going outside for a little bit and playing some baseball and taking a hike around the neighborhood. So, yeah, you got to get creative.
That episode we had Adam Wainwright on a year and a half or so ago, and I was Zooming from my downstairs, and Bo came in, and he had no care that Daddy was trying to do something. He's trying to talk to me, and I'm like putting myself on mute, like, yeah, no.
That was actually, I think that was our first show during the pandemic.
It could have been.
That would have been almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, gosh, that time is flying. It's unreal.
Yep. Yeah.
So and I did mention that this is our 250th episode. That's intense.
Yeah, and our goal is to get to 300 this year. We're a little bit behind, but that's still our goal. So we'll see what we can do yet.
Well, the plan is once we get to 300, we just stop. Right?
Maybe I should stop at 250.
Today is the beginning of the end, everybody.
It's just the end.
I do want folks to know we have an author on with us today. We've got Mark Wolowicz. He's an author of the book called Bullet, Training an Accidental Shed Dog. So it's kind of that time of year where shed hunting is top of mind for folks. So in a little bit, we'll bring Mark on and we'll talk about shed hunting.
That's right. In the meantime, we got some housekeeping to do, though, right?
We do. As always, we got our shout outs.
All right. So you want to get a shout out on the podcast? All you got to do is go over to Facebook, type in the search bar, Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Rack Pack, and it's a private group. You answer a few quick, funny questions, and then you're in.
And Matt,
and so then.
Let me say, it's important that you answer the questions because we've had like some weird fake profiles try joining the group, ostensibly to sell crap to people or, throw phishing stuff out there. Yeah. So please do us a favor, help us understand that you are a real person and answer the questions.
Thank you, Tim. All right.
Do what I can.
All right, so I'm gonna do the shout out. Tim always throws in a fake name here, so let's see what we got. So right out of the gate, we got Levi Wadesworth, Ben Stallman, Steven Stolzvis, Taylor Johnson, Choke Loafstar, Brandon Abbott, Matthew Sullivan. Are there 2 fake names this time?
These poor people are like, I'm a real person. You're laughing at my name. Steven Stoltzfus is a real individual.
Okay, so let me explain why I felt like it was fake. Is because we're good friends with, and he's a Drury Outdoors team member, Steve Stoltz. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Steven Stoltzfus to be a fake name.
True, and I had the same thought when I read it. I was like, oh, that sounds like... Well, and there was also a guy that joined up. His name is John Engelbrecht, and I have a buddy named John Ellebrecht, and that screwed me up when I saw that too.
And there you go.
Fortunately, we have no one with a name similar to Tim Chelsvik, so I'll never be screwed up by that.
No one wants it. All right. Choke Lodestar has to be the fake name since Steven
Ding, ding,
Stoltzfus
ding.
is real.
Choke is definitely fake. But did you notice the other person in there, Matt?
Yeah, Ben Stallman. Ben was embedded with Terry and Forrest all fall. So Ben was new for us this past year, and he got his learning permit real quick.
He's actually also part of our live studio audience. He gets to hear, like, his desk is over there. He gets to hear the other, like, our half of the conversation. He never gets to hear the person on the Zoom.
So today he only gets to hear 1/3 of the conversation.
Sorry about that, Ben. And he's late today, so he's not even here to get to hear his shout out.
Good point.
I guess he'll just have to pick it up when he listens to the show. And then over on Apple Podcasts, we got a 5-star review from Haas12992. It's an awesome last name. He says, very informative and funny. This is a long one, but he says, absolutely love the podcast, especially when Mark and Terry are on. We do too. The information on this podcast and DoD has been a big part of me improving the quality of the habitat on my farm, changed the way we hunt. 10 years ago, you'd be hard-pressed to see a dozen deer all season, and they were 1 to 2 year olds at best. Now we're regularly having a whole lot more, and at times over 100. We now regularly hunt mature deer in the 150 to 170 class. How about an invite? And weighing over 200 pounds. Had one mature buck over 300 pounds in East Tennessee, and that's extremely rare. 13, and this podcast have played a huge part in turning my farm into a really nice place to watch and hunt deer and turkey. Thanks, fellars.
I like how he spelled fellers.
I do too. That's not the first time someone's called us fellers.
Yeah, I like that.
I guess that's becoming a thing.
That may have been the best review we've had yet.
It's great. It's great. And like, it really does make us happy when we hear that the show is having an impact on people's hunting success. Like, that's cool. We get the same kind of feedback for DeerCast. We hear it more for DeerCast. Mostly we hear people saying like, hey, I love to be entertained. I love the fact I'm not the only one that sucks at deer hunting. But it's nice that we can help people kill deer too.
That's right. We're here to help.
That's right.
That's all we can do. All right, Tim.
Speaking of helping, how about we bring on our guest, Mark Wolowicz? He's a book writer.
What's up, Mark?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing good, buddy.
Excellent.
How about you?
Oh, I'm doing fine.
You got a few sheds behind you.
Yeah, those are. I always put my new sheds on this shelf. Unfortunately, that's all there are for this year so far.
Well,
but,
it's
early yet.
A little early, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's mid-February when we're recording this, so you've got to jump on most people, including myself.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to start. Let's real quick kind of give your background and a short synopsis of how you got into it. And you're a Missouri transplant via Maine? Is that right?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. So give us a little bit of a rundown there. And then I do have a question for you in the timing of when to go shed hunting, but we'll jump into that in a second.
Okay. Well, the background is I grew up in Massachusetts, as we already said, and there were no deer in Massachusetts when I grew up, but my father was big into deer hunting. And for some reason, I became so interested in what he was doing at a very young age. And I would go and practice deer hunting in the backyard. And finally, my mother convinced him to take me. And I loved it so much. And when I got out here, the Army dropped me out here. And I couldn't believe how many deer there were. I had actually never seen a live deer before I got out I actually started in Kansas. But and that got me into bow hunting and more rifle hunting. And then I learned that deer lose their antlers every year, which is something else I didn't know. I didn't know that till I was about 22 years old. And my father never taught me that. I guess he didn't know either.
Did your dad ever kill a deer?
I'm sorry?
Did your dad ever kill a deer out there?
Yes, my dad, over a 30-year deer hunting career, totaled three whitetail deer.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
just different hunting, man. But especially back then. I mean, that it was tough hunting everywhere, kind of. But
sure,
definitely.
Well, I understand that in Missouri, about that same time, it was, they were few and far between as well. But by the time I got out here in the late 80s, it seemed like there was one behind every tree.
Mm-hmm. What was it like in your family / neighborhood, if the deer were that rare, killing them even rarer, and your dad killed one?
It was great. There were some crazy scenes. I remember all three of them. And it was nuts. I mean, people would pour out of their houses to see, because back then they would just tie them to the front of the car or throw them on the the trunk of the old family sedan and drive around with them like that. And nobody had really ever seen one before until there was one riding on the car coming down the road. So it was like a carnival.
We just living in the era that we live, we probably don't have the appreciation that we ought to for the conservation story leading up to where we are in this point in the history of deer hunting.
Oh, absolutely not. I know when I moved to Missouri finally, I was so amazed by the work that Missouri Department of Conservation has done. And here in the last probably 10, 12 years, I found out that Massachusetts has modeled their conservation department after Missouri's, and they've really grown their herd up there as well. So there's a lot of deer up there now.
That's great. That's great. So you come from a background where a strong passion for deer hunting, but just very little exposure to it, which is pretty commendable, really.
I have no idea why I became so interested in something that, one, was boring, two, never saw or got anything, but I looked forward to that 1 week a year. I mean, that was like Christmas to me.
Yeah, you're kind of like a Bigfoot hunter.
Honestly, I think
that's what I felt like.
People from your generation and Tim's and my generation couldn't relate to that because, when I was a kid hunting with Dad, it wasn't like what it is today. I mean, shit, we were hunting and seeing, I'd be lucky to see a deer. We would be hunting on 20 acres, 24 acres, and you'd be done by the best part of hunting usually was the memories. So going to breakfast at 9 or 10 a.m. or, you just didn't see much. So I think a lot of people could probably relate to that of that age group. And then you look at, say, like Taylor's generation, younger, it's a much different, it's just a much different thing because deer hunting in the last 20 years specifically, it's just boomed along with the industry for deer hunting. And it's just become such a different thing than it was back then. It was so much about tradition. There's still a lot of tradition now, but back then the tradition just was, like you said, looking forward to that week or that week in a gun season or whatever it was, the opener, that was what you looked forward to. And if somebody killed a deer, it was great, but it really wasn't usually about that. It was more about the experience.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was, getting the guys together. I know my dad had a couple of friends from his job that would go out with us, and mid-morning we'd all, meet and build a fire and sit around and, well, basically tell ghost stories because nobody ever really saw anything. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I don't want to belabor this point, and we can move on after this, but it's important to note the reason we are here in this epic in deer hunting is with in most places in the country there's a pretty good herd populations. We are not here because of animal rights activists or anti-hunters.
No. In fact, right now there's what did I see on the Sportsman's it was the Facebook page,
Sportsman's Alliance.
Yeah, and what is it that Biden's talking to animal rights activists right now about hunting on public land?
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It just gets worse.
Yeah, they certainly didn't get us here. Again, from up New England where I'm from, that's, Lyme disease, that's in my opinion and everything I've ever seen, that's just overpopulation. If somebody doesn't take care of it, nature will take care of it.
I wonder if they thought about outlawing Lyme disease.
Well, maybe, yeah.
See how that goes.
That'd be awesome.
Right.
All right. So you kind of took us through your interest in deer and deer hunting. So, based on your book title, how did you get into shed hunting and that aspect of it?
Okay, you mentioned the book title. It was by accident because I came out here and the only thing, I mean, my dad would hunt grouse and squirrel and pheasant and things like that, not very successfully except for the grouse. But I was all about the deer. I didn't care about birds. But when I got out to the Midwest, it seemed everybody cared about birds. And some guys some Army buddies of mine talked me into a pheasant hunt in Northwest Missouri. And I was skeptical at first, and I ended up more than skeptical because I went with them. And it was horrible. We marched across so many crop fields full of weeds and whatnot. While I was out there supposedly bird hunting, allegedly, I actually, it's hard to believe, but it's true. I actually stepped on something in this field, and I felt something hit my shin. And I'm embarrassed, but I thought I was bitten by a snake. And when I looked down, I was standing on a deer antler, and I had no idea how it had gotten there. And that's where I learned that the deer shed their antlers. That was the first thing. I accidentally stepped on one, and that started this whole ball rolling.
And what year was that?
Oh my God. Let's say maybe 1990 or so.
Yeah.
Okay. So far, the theme in your entire life story has been accidents.
It's all been accidental. I was probably an accident, if you look back that far, but I don't want to look back that far.
We can all relate to that.
But the whole thing is, it's one accident after another led me to this place that I wouldn't trade it for anything. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you find your first shed, you realize, okay, deer do this every year. So they're laying out there right for the taking.
Right.
How do I get more of these?
Exactly. So I started really studying that. I was buying all these North American whitetail magazines and all
it's a
about
joke of a
and
magazine.
They always show the trophy whitetail and all that. And I was really excited about it. I still didn't really know how to find them except to go wander around. So that's what I did. It took me a while to find some on purpose. And when I did, then I began following fence lines, because the first antlers I ever found on purpose were along fence lines. Uh-huh. So I focused all my efforts on fence lines. I figured that when they jump over, maybe they're loose and they would fall off, because that seemed to make sense to me. And I started there, and I just advanced on to where I learned a lot of different ways to find them. Yeah, a lot of different places to look.
So how many were you finding early on?
Early on, I think the best year I ever had was half a dozen, 6 the first few years.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And now, where you're primarily shed hunting on public ground, or is that what
starting out, probably the first dozen years, it was all public ground. I never had much luck gaining access to private property, even for bow hunting or rifle hunting. And even shed hunting, I thought it'd be easier to get on, because you're not killing anything or whatever, and some people don't like that. But I had a lot of trouble finding properties. But so the first 12 years or so, it was all public land. And then as I settled into, the house I live in, moved into the neighborhood, started talking to people, getting to know more people, then I've grown a pretty good bunch of private property that I can hunt.
Very good. So, okay, fast forward, and now you have a dog named Bullet, and there's another accident, and he takes to shed hunting in some form or fashion?
Absolutely. Bullet was an accident starting out. We had just lost another lab that I had for like 13 years, I think, and we had lost him, and we weren't planning on replacing him with any dog right away. But about 3 weeks after we heard about an accidental litter of labs about 50, 60 miles from us. My wife found out about it, and everybody got so excited. Not only us, I mean, I guess everybody did, because we were heading that way the next day, and Bullet was the last. He was the last dog left, so we took him. Then so for the first 4 years of his life, he just kind of lazed around the house, because I never heard of shed hunting prior to when I did.
Yeah.
I certainly never heard of using a dog to do this. Actually, my wife and I would go out and do it, and the dogs would, you'd just lay at home. And it was an accident that got him out to the field too.
Yeah, all those years you had a secret weapon staying at home.
I had no idea. He never told me. He basically let me go make my mistakes, and hoping maybe that I would learn from it, but I didn't. So if I'll get into how he got out in the field at 4 years old.
Yeah. Take us through that, and then how you train a dog, to get even more proficient at finding sheds.
Sure. So my wife, as I said, my wife and I would go out hiking. We hiked a lot, and we'd go shed hunting in the winter, every winter. And one year around Christmas time, we were getting Christmas down out of the attic, which is where we store all our decorations and whatnot. And my wife went up there to grab something, and she fell off the ladder. Ooh. And she landed down below, and she injured her back. So after a couple surgeries and all that, physical therapy and whatnot, she couldn't go. I mean, and I was itching, dying to get out there. I mean, I try to be, compassionate and everything, but I can't sit in the house all winter long and not do anything. It drives me crazy, and I drove her crazy. So finally, it was just one weekend. She got sick of me, and she said, "Why don't you go shed hunting?" And I told her, I said, "Well, I would, but I've got no one to go with." And she looked over at the dog laying there and said, "Well, why don't you take Bullet with you?" Mm. And I really didn't want to. I said, what good is he going to do me out there? I mean, I'm going to be chasing him around. How am I going to look for any antlers? And she said, "It doesn't matter. Just take him. He needs the exercise. Look at him." So she got him riled up about going for a car ride, and I started getting ready. Now I have to pack a water bowl. I got to pack some treats, a leash, maybe a cell phone to call search and rescue. But so I get all this stuff ready, and the dog's still waiting at the door. And I don't know why I did this, but I grabbed a little shed that I had. I'd probably had this for 10 years or so, just a tiny little fork horn that would fit in my pocket, and I grabbed it on the way out the door. And when I wanted to go to this one spot that I find a lot of antlers at year after year. And so I took him there, and he jumped out and ran around. He was all excited and everything. And I called him over to me, and I just took that antler and waved it in front of him and said, "Look, dude, this is what we're out here for. We're not out here to play. We're working. We have to find somebody's bones." And he sniffed at it and everything, and he showed an interest in it. Now, we've always had antlers everywhere in the house that he never even cared about. He would never even look at them. But for some reason, he saw this one, and from there, he took off running, and we just started walking around. Every once in a while, I just stop and hold it in front of him to remind him what he was doing. And about an hour or so in, he took off, and I couldn't find him. When I finally found him, he was sitting on a shed. He hadn't learned to retrieve them yet, but he was sitting on one. So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then if you want to know about how to train them, it really helped me that he basically knew what he was doing already. So I never thought about training him or how to train him. But after that first day, when he found a couple out there, I thought, well, geez, maybe I better learn how this works, how he knows how to do this, and maybe I can, get somebody out there. We had 4 dogs at that time, and maybe we could get some of the other ones interested in it too.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that go? Sorry, Tim.
Oh, it went horribly. It went horribly. I have a German Shepherd Lab mix who's so hard-headed, and he's I think he's almost 4 now. And he still hasn't caught on. And he used to follow Bullet around the yard during our training sessions and watch him, and he'd do just fine. But if you get him out on his own in the real world, he doesn't care.
That was kind of my question was, does it depend on kind of the individual disposition of the animal, or do you find that this capacity is across all dogs?
Well, the capacity is definitely there. But it definitely depends on the individual. Some dogs just don't get it. In studying this, when I finally decided to write a training manual about it, there's German Shepherds. Everybody thinks, oh, the police dogs. More German Shepherds flunk out of police academy than ever get to ride in the back of a patrol car. It's their disposition, their drive. There's a lot of different factors that you have to think about when you go into it. And now, I give some advice online, on Facebook, mostly on those groups, and people, it seems like, don't understand that, you have a black lab or whatever, the best dog to shed hunt with ever. And some of them just aren't going to care enough to do it. So it's not every dog will do it.
Looking back over because Bullet didn't start until he was 4 years old, do you see any like formative experiences that he had that maybe kind of led to his ability to do this?
As far as finding antlers, no. He did have, an accidental experience that helped a lot in shed hunting and things like that. Because one of the major concerns that I had bringing him out there, or that most people have bringing a dog out there, it's like, oh, can my beagle do it or whatever? Well, sure. Any dog, any breed could do it. But when you get out there and the rabbit, takes off from near your feet, is your dog going to chase that rabbit? And my Bullet, when he was about 1 year old, he chased a squirrel in our yard, and he almost impaled himself on a bent fence post.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So after that, he wouldn't chase anything. I mean, cats could walk through, or it didn't matter. So when I went to the field, if you started some deer up out of a brush pile or something, that he wouldn't chase anything. He would just watch them go. So that helped. But as far as finding the antlers, I mean, he grew up. His entire life he spent in a house where there were antlers everywhere, and we never tried to dog-proof the house. Like all the antlers most of the antlers were well within reach of him at all times. They're on coffee tables, end tables. They're everywhere, bookshelves, and he never cared. And he just had this something that I can't describe it. It was something. He still, after he learned to shed hunt, he didn't bother with the antlers in the house. He just wanted to find them outside, and he'd only look for them if I told him to.
All right. So what would be, the number one tip you could give somebody that kind of another amateur, so to speak, and not professionally trained in training dogs? What's the number one tip you would give them on trying to get their dog started in shed hunting?
Okay, the number one tip is avoid all the accidents, because it's not fun. 2, patience. You have to have a lot of patience, and you have to understand that not like we talk about, not every dog's going to do it, and not every dog's going to want to do it every single day. When you find that one dog that he's got that drive and that interest, take advantage of it and enjoy it while you can. Because, a lot of dogs will go out and do it and lose interest after so long, but you just have to have a lot of patience and be willing to go out, put in the time, and sometimes come back with nothing.
Sure. So what was the impetus for writing the book?
Okay, the impetus for writing the book was I got on to all these, as I mentioned them before, the Facebook groups. There's thousands of them, it seems like, shed hunting this, shed antler that. And I was on a lot of those, but I had never seen anything about dogs. So when Bullet found his antlers, I was on there that night putting it, look at what my dog did. And everybody was like, oh, hey, that's a great job. Oh, what a good dog. And then one guy, I wish I could go back. I could remember his name, because he gets a lot of the credit. He said, how did you do that? How'd you teach your dog to do that? And I mean, I shut the computer down immediately because I didn't do it. I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know how to answer this guy. So I started researching how you would do this. And the morning after that first shed hunt, I had planted some antlers out in the yard that night after the incident with the computer. And I planted some sheds out in the yard. And the next morning, we went outside and I told him to find the bones. And he started looking and doing that. And that's how we started kind of developing our training method. So that was the impetus of the book, because then after that, people just started asking how I did it. And I figured I better find out. And after a while, I was getting, 10, 20, 30 questions a day of how I did this. And finally, I just decided, if I just put this all into one place, I won't have to answer all these emails and whatnot all the time. And and they take care of it that way.
It's kind of also the genesis of DeerCast. People could quit asking Mark and Terry when they should go hunting. We'll just build an app for this.
Or how to track their deer.
Yes. Yeah.
So about how long ago was this when you first took Bullet out?
Well, I think it's like 7 years now. It was 7 years ago. Yeah.
So in that time, you've got quite a bit of experience in utilizing. And I know, and condolences. I saw that your dog had passed away in December. I hate to hear that. But what a fitting tribute. So you had 4 or 5 years. No, you had 7 years with him where you were actually going out there and having success in the woods.
Yeah. Yep. 7 years. He found a lot of antlers in that time. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have an approximate count of how many scores Bullet had?
Somebody asked me that the other day, and he was somewhere in the mid 100s.
Oh man.
I could use a dog like that, because I'm in somewhere in the mid single digits.
Well,
me too.
To me, the interesting thing about what you've done is, shed dogs, that's a discipline. There are people that breed dogs. Roger Sigler with antler dogs. That's his whole business.
Dude, I met Roger after I wrote my book. I didn't know this existed. And he actually lives 10 miles from me.
Oh, no kidding.
No, yeah. And all this time, people are asking me how to train a dog when there's a guy 10 minutes up the road who knows how to train a dog. He's making his
bread and butter off of it. Here you.
What are people thinking?
You fell into it.
It's incredible. Roger does a great job. He's a great guy too. I went up, I spent some time with him, and he's awesome. He does a great job up there.
Agreed.
So you said the number one thing is to avoid the accidents. Give us a story of a crazy incident that happened to you. I saw in the forward for the book something about going over a cliff's edge and almost falling down a well, and there's all kinds of things that happen. So give us more pitfalls there.
I answered one of the people today on Facebook. In fact, before I got on here, somebody asked about training the dog. How do you get the dog to go out farther? He's got a 4-month-old puppy that he's trying to train to shed hunt, and the dog won't go more than 10 yards from him out in the field. And the dog's looking for visual cues from you at that age. He doesn't have the confidence to just go wander off into the woods by himself, especially when he knows you're trying to train him. You're constantly talking to him, so he's paying attention. So he's not going to get that far from you. And I told him at that age, you really don't want him to. Bullet and I hunted. It's a private property about 7 miles from me, and we've been on that property 4 or 5 seasons. Leading up to this, every time we went out there, there was never any snow or anything on the ground, and all the weeds and stuff had grown up. And then that final year we went out there, and it had snowed. And as we're walking up this way where we find some antlers sometimes, I saw this. It was just a shadow on the ground, and I didn't know what it was. And it turned out it was an open well, and I couldn't believe it. It was open. And that thing went down forever. And it was just out there. And we had walked by that probably, a dozen times over the years. And I never even knew it was there. And I couldn't imagine having a 4-month-old puppy, wandering out in front of you, and you're trying to shoo him farther and farther away. And he might just walk off into there I almost walked off into it.
I know, like for instance, with Tracker John, who helps us track any of our deer that we have trouble finding after we hit them. He's got a leash, and I mean it's super long. I mean this thing, it's a really really long leash, and he's constantly pulling it in or letting the slack out. It's a pain. It looks like it's a pain in the butt for him because of the things the deer or that the dog can get into in the situations. But would that be worth doing, having your dog on a leash for those types of situations?
Absolutely. A heavy duty, you need I don't care what size dog you have, you need the heavy duty leash, you need metal hardware on it, not the plastic nylon junk. And the retractable leash, they make those tape style ones with the flat tape. Don't ever do that. That's just wasting your money. Get the braided cord. The one that I kept bullet on was 37. It was 37 feet.
Whoa.
So there you are. I mean, you're over 10 yards right there. And believe me, with my eyes, 10 yards is plenty far for him to find something that I would have walked past, and there you keep them out. I mean, there's some places that I go where there's guys run traps, and I don't want my dog stepping into a trap. So I find out where the traps might, where his line is. And that on a leash like that, I can keep them away from the traps. I don't want them going into something like that. Sure. Or like I said, into one of those open wells. Turns out there were 3 wells on that guy's property. He had owned that property for over 20 years, and he didn't know that they were there. And I told him about it, and we went and, we covered him up, but he had no idea either. So there's some hazards out there for sure.
Yeah.
Mark, in your time watching Bullet do his work, do you think that it's easier for dogs to find fresh sheds because there's still, the tissue is still maybe there on the pedicle, and
it's probably easier for them, but they don't have a problem finding the older ones either. Those dogs' noses are incredible. And I, in studying it for the book, because I was actually going to write a training manual. It was going to be cut and dried. And that didn't work out. If anybody reads the book, they'll see it didn't work out. The training method is in the book. You can train your dog with the book, but you're going to have to put up with a lot of my stories too. But yeah, their noses are just incredible. They're completely different than ours. They're not even the same design, and they use them in a manner to, they're interpreting their entire environment. They can find those. I don't care how old the shed is. They could find it if they know what they're looking for.
What's the strangest place you guys ever found a shed?
In a shed.
No.
Matt. It's a shed.
The strangest place I've ever found a shed. Well, oh boy, yeah, that's tough. There's so many strange places. There's one spot that I go. I don't know why, but people like to put their tires. Somebody put their tires historically in this one spot on a property, and in amongst the tires, where it almost looks like somebody put it there. So like a human might have put it there.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, my phone's going off.
Find it in the tire pile.
Yep, tire pile. That's probably the strangest place. Yeah.
So the book, where can people find this at?
Any online retailer, but all the online retailers get it from Amazon. So Amazon is probably the best place to go. Yeah.
I don't know if you're open to this, but would you be willing for us to run a little contest inside the Rack Pack and give one of your books away?
Absolutely. I have no problem doing that at all. I have to get one in the mail today, as a matter of fact, for somebody who won one the other day. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Good deal.
Maybe we'll have people send in their biggest shed to us, and whoever sends in the biggest one, we'll send them a book.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that'll work.
Boom. All right.
That'd be a good trade.
Or we'll have people make a comment on a post we'll make in the Rack Pack, and we'll pick a random winner.
Here's the deal, though. It should be a picture of them with the shed, because you could go online and find any shed.
Yeah. No fakey shed shots.
Yeah, and if you're doing the biggest one, make sure they hold it way out towards the camera.
That's how you're supposed to do
it looks nice and big. Yep, there you go.
That's how you do it with fish and deer and everything.
Tim, you missed a golden opportunity to use the soundboard there.
Ah, man.
All right.
I'm no good.
No, you're not.
But we're still going to help our friends out with this week's question of the day.
All right. The question of the day is proudly brought to you by Leopold, rugged to the core and ready for your next outdoor adventure. And I'd like to say a good pair of glass when you're shed hunting can really help you out. I personally, like and I'm not a great shed hunter, so I need all the help I can get. So especially when you're walking, say, a fireman's line with a bunch of people or police line or whatever, to be able to spot ahead, because I've been on shed hunts with guys like Eric Buthen and these guys are unbelievably good at shed hunting. Aaron Bennett. And you got to be able to put the binoculars up and look out ahead of them, because when they see them, their eyesight's incredible. When they see them, they're off like a rocket. They're off like a bullet, I should say.
No. All right, Philip, here you go, buddy.
Hi, this is Philip Entwistle from Atlanta, Georgia. My question to you is, when dealing with tracking a deer onto neighboring property and the person that owns the neighboring property isn't a hunter. I just recently, about a month ago, shot a nice buck and went on the neighbor's property, and he was not a hunter by any means, and I caught an earful, and I was as nice as could be. He eventually did let me go track after the deer, and but he was not very happy with it and told me I should not be hunting the deer in the area because they are like pets. So that's my question. Just wondering what your opinion is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Shoot me a message and we'll get you a DeerCast hat because we used your question of the day on the show.
It sounds like he should reach out to the guys over at Seek One. he's in Atlanta, Georgia. That's exactly their scenario all the time. I'm sure they got all kinds of stories, but that's a really tough scenario. And I'm sure, Mark, you kind of run into this when shed hunting. It's obviously way different, but trying to ask permission to go shed hunt properties. But it's a real sticky situation. And especially when you run into somebody that's vehemently against hunting, that's a tough fence to cross, so to speak. I think, that you did it the right way by kind of, being polite, respectful, pleading your case. And I wonder if you do happen to recover the animal, if it's a situation where you show back up, a little bit after the fact with some processed deer, deer sausage or, some ground deer or whatever, and maybe present them with what the end result was, which, hey, here's why we're actually doing it, trying to feed ourselves and our families and our friends from it. So that doesn't help you in the moment, obviously, but that might be a way to gain that access again, because if you're continuing to hunt the same property, there's a good chance that you're going to run into that same problem from time to time. The deer I shot in the late season on the new lease, it ran onto the neighboring property. Fortunately for us, we have a good relationship. Our landowner does with him. And so first thing we did is we told our landowner, he called that landowner, and he kind of pleaded the case, and the guy had no problems with it. We tried to be very respectful, just follow the blood trail right in and not disturb his property too much. And then, quietly back out of there. So those are things that, they don't see, obviously, it not being on the track job with you, but you never know what cameras might be out there or whatnot. So just, be respectful of that person's property and try to be in and out as quickly as possible, and maybe call them after you retrieved your animal and let them know where you found it, so they know where you were at on the property. We used the OnX app and used the track function, and I screenshot it and sent it to the landowner, and then he was able to relay that to the neighboring landowner. So those are just a couple of tactics, but if you don't get permission, it certainly can be tough. Another thing you can ask them is if they would like to go on the track job with you. I know on Terry's property, if neighbors happen to hit a deer, him or Forrest usually go on that track job with them and help them out. So that's another option. Not that a non-hunter would want to do that, but it might give them peace of mind that you're not doing anything, that you shouldn't be on their property.
Yep. Yeah, Mark, do you have any additional insights there?
Well, I had a lot of insights back when I would go looking for places to go hunting, and I get thrown off of people's porches. They'd be like, "Hey, you're not hunting any deer on my land." But now for shed hunting, I always offer to either let them have the antlers, any antlers that I find, or which is more than what I want, I'll build them a lamp, like a table lamp or something out of an antler, and give it to them for in exchange for permission to walk their ground.
That's pretty cool. And that was a question I had, like what you do with the antlers, because you got to have a lot over the years.
Yeah, my wife made a chandelier for over our dining room table. They're still laying around everywhere, honestly. Cool. But I built table lamps out of old textile mill spools from an antique shop, and I think they're pretty classy looking. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Maybe you could send us a picture of that chandelier. We could use it as B-roll in the video show.
Oh yeah, I'll absolutely do that.
The one other thing I would add to Philip's question, because I hunt a lot of suburbia, so they're very small plots, and it's very likely the deer is not going to die on the ground you shot it on, is early on, if I'm new to a spot, it may make more sense for my landowner to go next door and have the conversation with the neighbor, because they already likely know them. And so it's not like some random guy in camouflage walking up asking to come on their property. It's like, oh, it's Jeff next door asking if one of his buddies can step over and retrieve their deer.
That's a pretty great point. And, that's another thing, coming up, because usually it's going to happen at night a lot of the time. You're knocking on somebody's door, you trying to get permission to go. They may not be in the best disposition right out of the gate, just based on how you approached them, whether you're the nicest guy in the world or not. Well, debatable. But in general, you think about that, and some strangers come and knocking on your door, and they're dressed in camouflage, and you probably leave the weapon in your vehicle.
Bingo.
So you don't have that addition to add to it. But I'm sure it's off-putting for some people.
The other thing, just mentally, is to realize you don't have the right to retrieve your deer. Like you are coming to them in a position of, I don't want to say weakness, but like you're hoping that they will grant you permission. You can't come at it with the expectation that they're going to allow you to do this. And I think that probably changes your attitude and maybe how you posture yourself in that conversation.
Now, I think, can that be different from state to state, though, and you're in the laws and the regulations? I know in Missouri that you don't have that right to go retrieve it, because I know people have called game wardens, and their hands are a little bit tied. I don't know if that's the case for every state. I'm not aware of all the laws.
I'm sure there are some variations. I know, like South Dakota, I think you can pretty much hunt wherever you'd like to, as long, like if someone has a no hunting sign up, then you can't, but like it's considered, like we went up there pheasant hunting, and it's pretty much like all open unless it's marked otherwise. So I think there are probably some differences state to state. I'm gonna get tore from the pheasant hunters now for something I said, I'm sure, but
oh yeah.
Okay, and this week's wildlife word, it is brought to you by Tracker Off-Road. Clean and silent, plenty of power, and no exhaust. Get your gobbler this spring with a stealth of an all-electric Tracker EV unit.
Woo-wee. And also great for shed hunting, big open fields.
Yes.
That's a good way to cover some ground.
Just don't find them with your tires.
True.
It's the expensive way of doing it.
Absolutely.
Okay, the question or the wildlife word this week is about deer antler supplements. I don't know if you guys have heard, but these are apparently a thing. So deer antler supplements have been taken for years by these kinds of people. A, bodybuilders. B, the infertile. C, those suffering from joint issues. D, idiots. Or E, all of the above.
You're struggling for this is not a good one, Tim. We let the guests go first, so you're up, Mark.
What D was idiots? I heard that. I'm gonna say all of the above. Yeah, I'm gonna say all of the above. From what I know about the Far East. Yeah.
Mark's casting a wide net.
Yeah, I'm with him.
Yeah. Okay. Matt's on board too, and you guys are both right. Congratulations.
Hey, we win.
Yeah, and the reason idiots is in there is because there's very little science or research to back up that they do anything other than provide a few minerals that are actually in the bone. Now, there are supplements made from deer antler velvet that have a lot of like bioactive compounds in them that put them kind of in a different class. But in general, there's not a whole lot of research that indicates it does much other than just kind of gives you a few minerals and nutrients.
Yeah, I never knew that about the velvet. You learn something new every day.
It's a good wildlife word, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yes.
Well, it has something to
use it
do.
often.
And it has something. The velvet side it just has something to do with the how amazingly fast that can grow, right? And while it's in the velvet stage, is that because I know like in the Far East there are some properties that they cherish because of that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there is.
What are you trying to say, Matt?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know.
Properties
Don't try this at home.
That's what she said.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in some places it's considered an aphrodisiac.
Yes.
Aha.
That's the properties.
That's it.
Okay, so we'll make sure to put a link to get your book on Amazon there, Mark, in the show notes, so folks are interested. Also in the show notes is a link to get to the 100% Wild Rack Pack on Facebook, that Facebook group. Also is a link to get to our voicemail service. So you can leave us a question of the day, and if we use it on the show, get a hold of me and we'll send you a DeerCast hat.
Boom.
You're a winner. That's right.
Mark, you have any parting shots for us? Any words of wisdom as we walk out the podcast door?
Just well, buy my book. No, just yeah. If you're planning to do this, just remember patience is that's the most important ingredient. And whether your dog can find an antler or not, the time that you spend out there with your dog or your family, your kids, just take advantage of it while you can, because it's really a great time.
Well said. Where can we find you at on social media? What are your handles?
I'm on Facebook at markwolowicz.author on Facebook, and I'm on, oh my God, I'm on YouTube, Twitter. I'm on, let me think of it. Hold on a second. It's American Author Mark Wolowicz. American Author Mark Wolowicz, all together is where you can find me.
All righty. Well,
Cool.
We appreciate you jumping on with us today.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on here. You guys do a great job. I really like you. I really like your show. And I really appreciate it. Thanks.
You're the first person that's ever said that, so thank you.
He's probably talking about 13.
Yeah, the real shows that we do.
Maybe.
Yeah, safe bet. All right, well, next week, Matt, do you know what we got coming up next week?
I don't.
It's episode number 251.
Yes, 251.
So if you guys like numbers, especially 2 and 5 and 1, that'll be the show you want to tune into.
That's the one. Hey, I got a 2 and a 5 and a 5 behind me.
Hey, very auspicious for our 255th show.
There you go.
Nice job. All right, everyone, thank you for watching. We sure appreciate it. Share the show, review it over on Apple Podcasts, and that'll ensure that we keep our jobs.
All right. Till next time.
See ya.
Peace out.
Temperatures are going to be dropping. Perfect conditions for the skinny field. Got to focus on those afternoon hunts. Northwest Tree Stand, 5 p.m.
It's the easiest decision you'll make this season. Get ahead of your game with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's.